evening. So we shall start with the opening recitations. The opening recitation, we shall do the short one. Over time, we will include the more complete version. But for now, the short one is sufficient. And when we say the short one, you may know by now, the short one basically is page 1, page 2. Then, and those two are the aspiration bodhicitta and engagement bodhicitta. Then, page 5, which is refuge. Then page 6, which is the 4 immeasurables, followed by page 8, which is the short sevenfold puja, sevenfold service. Sevenfold because there are 7 elements there. So this is the short opening recitations. So briefly, aspiration and engagement bodhicitta. Whenever we say aspiration and engagement bodhicitta, then you should know we are referring to what's known as relative bodhicitta. Yeah, so the bigger category is bodhicitta. Bodhi means awakened, chitta mind. It could be awakened mind or awakening mind. Yeah, so bodhicitta. Then bodhicitta has 2 aspects. First, relative aspect and absolute aspect. So it's the same, right? It's the same bodhi mind, but it has 2 aspects: the relative aspect and the absolute aspect. The absolute aspect pertains to wisdom. The relative aspect pertains to love and compassion. So here, by relying on the relative aspect, we can then achieve or realize or actualize the absolute aspect. Then under the relative aspect, there is the aspiration aspect and the engagement aspect, which is these first 2 recitations that we do. So the aspiration aspect is basically to make the resolve, to make the promise, to say, I want to achieve a state of Buddha for the sake of all beings. I want to achieve the result of being an awakened one for the sake of all beings. Yes, of course, at this point, it really sounds kind of hypocritical and uncomfortable. And if it feels that way, that means you're actually listening to what you're saying. Yeah? If it doesn't feel that way, I'm afraid probably you're not really hearing what you're saying. Because I don't know about you, being honest, I would say, I don't quite feel like I'm walking around, feeling like, yes, I will become Buddha really for the benefit of all beings, So if you feel awkward saying, oh, for the benefit of all beings, and feel a little awkward and perhaps a little embarrassed and perhaps a little guilty, good. That means you're actually listening to what it's saying. And so we should continue to say this until we truly mean this. Not we should continue to say this like a parrot, just making sounds. But we should continue to say this, I will become Buddha. I will strive to become Buddha for the benefit of others. We keep saying that. We keep saying that until we really mean that. Then engagement bodhicitta is to say, and therefore, now, since I have already resolved to become Buddha, now I need to be determined to practice what needs to be practiced in order to get to that state. So that's engagement bodhicitta. And in this recitation, it's summarized as virtuous deeds of body, speech, and mind. And then in the four dharmas of Gampopa, Gampopa defines, right, in one of his root texts, he says, how are actions virtuous? Actions are virtuous, truly virtuous, when they are not motivated by the three poisons: confusion or ignorance. And that basic confusion or ignorance that then gives rise to attachment and aversion. These are the three poisons. So Gampopa, in one of the root texts of the four dharmas, say, whatever actions that are not driven by those things, they are virtuous actions. But whatever actions that are tainted by those three, then they are not virtuous actions that can lead to the state of Buddha. Which tells us actually then, in the realm of the not virtuous, it's not equally not virtuous. There are grades of it, you know. Some can actually bring some temporary satisfactory or desirable results, but in the long run cannot deliver. Some of these non-virtuous, totally, when they are happening as cause, when they're percolating the results, when they come as results, they are all just bringing pain. So in the realm of the non-virtuous, you know, some of it are, as we say, you know, the devil in disguise. Look kind of angelic. But because, you know, the three poisons are involved, yeah, even though the angelic result that it brings temporarily delivers some comfortable situation, some pleasant conditions, ultimately they are going to betray us. Yeah? So watch out for those types of seemingly virtuous, but actually not, because they are involved in the three poisons. Yeah? Then also important, you know, later maybe we'll talk about this, when we talk about virtuous and non-virtuous, you know, because all of us, you know, have all kinds of weird baggage that we bring with us about, you know, do's and don'ts in the context of religion. So then I think many of us, you know, carry a very, we all have our strange bags and baggage regarding virtuous, non-virtuous actions, do's and don'ts. But we got to be very careful about those, because this is not, you know, about fear. Although, you know, certainly you can sometimes find in the Buddhist texts the use of like maybe fear, you know, to warn us from doing something. But ultimately, you know, whether we engage in certain actions or not, ultimately we have to see that they defeat our most deepest desire, which is to be free. How unskillful actions ultimately defeat our deepest desire. And therefore, if we want to so much to fulfill our deepest desires, then we've got to give up, you know, these things that destroy the fulfillment of our deepest desire. So it's much better to give up the non-virtuous to give up the unskillful ways of acting due to seeing how they are the enemies of our deepest desires, rather than, somebody intimidating you into giving them up. The intimidating part, in the end, it doesn't work, So be careful about that point, yeah? So, the opening recitation. O Mother, sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Now in the Tibetan, Dala Dhawa Jibe Dra No Bar Jibe Gang Tarbadan Tam Je Kembe Bardu Jobra Jeba Tam Je Gizu Jibe Manangana Nambe Senjen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Dungyal Dander Nerdu Lana Mebaya Dabra Zobe Chanju Rinpoche Dobra Dala Dangwa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Gek Tarba Dang Tam Je Kempe Bardu Chobra Jeba Tam Je Gizu Jebe Manangkada Nyambe Senjen Tam Je Dewa Tan Den Dungyal Dander Nirdu Lana Mepa Yang Dabra Zobe Changju Rinpoche Dobra Dala Dangwa Jebe Dan Obar Jebe Gek Tarba Dan Tam Je Gembe Bardu Jobra Jeba Tam Je Gizu Jebe Manangka Dang Nyambe Senjen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Dungyal Dang Nirdu Lana Meba Yang Dabra Zobe Chanju Rinpoche Tobra Du Sama Gegi Bardu Lunga Izum Gewala Go Mashi Bardu Lunga Izum Gewala Go Du Dering Ne Sungde Nima Santa Samgi Bardu Lunga Izum Gewala Go. Part of the rationale of continuing to chant in Tibetan is to then relate to this as a form of discipline. Yeah? I don't chant in Tibetan because I think Tibetan has some magic, some inherent magic. But it does have, for some of us, some relative magic, which means based on our own need and our own need for a sense of mystique. so it can have some effect like that. Oh, look, we're chanting in Tibetan, So it's okay, if that helps to kind of inspire us. I'm willing to do the Tibetan as a discipline, because for the last, I don't know, at least a few hundred years, or if you trace it to the beginning of the lineage, these two were composed by the founder. If you trace it to the beginning of the lineage in around 12th century, it's like they have invented this wheel, this particular way of chanting. So they have invented and perfected this wheel. Now, instead of reinventing the wheel, at some point, the reinventing, I think, will happen. It's necessary. So figuring out how to chant this in English, how to chant this in Spanish, or how to chant this in whatever local language. At some point, those wheels will be invented. But now, maybe we don't have that much time to go experiment with that. So we rely on a Tibetan wheel. We'll use it until, that wheel stops, being useful in this new world, in this other world, in this other land. But one way to relate to this practice of chanting is it's a form of discipline. So in terms of relating to it as a form of discipline, you can then pay attention to things like, I don't want to do it. I feel kind of stupid, like weird. Good is challenging. Is shining a light on your ego. Your sense of like, oh, I want to look good. I don't want to chant in this. I don't know how to say it. I look kind of silly. Good. This is the discipline. Yeah. Or I feel a resistance. Good. This is the discipline. So second reason, I think, in terms of relating to this as a form of discipline. Because in the end, right, the spiritual path is a discipline. I think in the popularization of meditation, spirituality, well-being, all of that, right? Because Buddhism and Buddhist techniques have kind of been taken over by this happiness industry, well-being industry. Many Buddhist practices have been taken by that. Now, even Dharma practitioners think, oh, Dharma, it's about, feeling good, feeling relaxed, feeling really calm, feeling really serene, I only want to go on pilgrimages where it's all very comfortable, But, pilgrimage is actually about hardship. The more hardship that you encounter, the more you have the chance to shape kind of your purify negative karma is the language that we use. Incidentally, today I was listening to BBC had a feature on a course that is being taught by a professor at Yale University on psychology of happiness. And her class, her non-elective class, have become the all-time most signed up class in the whole history of Yale University. And one of the things that she said is that she said, based on scientific studies, the idea that manipulating our environment will make people happier, the evidence is showing the opposite, which is undergoing and coming out on the other side of a difficult time, a difficult situation, a difficult condition, makes people overall more happy, more stable, and a more healthy sense of self. Is to actually go through a difficult situation. Of course, instinctively, we don't want that. So we manipulate everything around. Yeah? So then we even, recruit spirituality to try to manipulate. So Trungpa Rinpoche's famous book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. Way back, he already pointed this out, Don't turn Buddha Dharma into this happiness cult. Don't turn Buddha Dharma into this happiness industry. Then, and this is also Gampopa, right? First Dharma. May the Dharma turn towards the Dharma. May the Dharma go in the direction of Dharma. So when we find ourselves in difficult situations, don't think of that as, how can I get out of it ASAP, but more, like how can this shape me and give me, right, the kind of the strength and the purpose to become stronger. So that, a very interesting program. Then of course, everything that she said, and I'm like, yeah, heard that. It's like, yeah, it's already in Buddhist teachings, But as I said, but we have like turned Buddhist teachings into like, relaxation. It's like, no, it's not for that, You can take Buddhist practices, certain Buddhist techniques for relaxation. That's okay, Buddha will not get upset with that, Buddha understands how much we are suffering and how much we want quick relief, You can do that. I'm not saying you cannot. But if you are saying, I want to put an end to my own suffering, and then not only that, I understand that, in fact, it's impossible to just work on my own problems. That there's no way to really even solve my own problem if I don't think in terms of doing it for the benefit of all, and genuinely give rise to that. If you are like doing all those, right? If you're actually compelled by that, really like mean what you're saying there, then it can no longer be, like I'm doing this to relax. Not that this should stress you. That is also not true. Yeah. But it cannot be, you cannot center stage, feeling relaxed, feeling good. You cannot, Then you're not taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha, Then you're doing something else, That's why refuge is really important, If we go looking for safety, if we go looking for refuge in the wrong places, if we have wrong objects of refuge, then we will never get out of this mess. So the importance of taking refuge, because refuge is safe direction. That's another way of talking about refuge. Buddha Dharma Sangha provides safe direction. Buddha Dharma Sangha is like the pole star, for ancient travelers, where there's no GPS and Waze and whatever, You look for the stars in the night sky and you know where is north. And then anywhere else you need to go, you know where. So Buddha Dharma Sangha is this pole star. It provides safe direction. So we need to truly from our heart take refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. In fact, Kyoba Jigten Sumgun, founder of Drikung Kagyu, he says that the definition of someone who is someone who is a follower of the inner path, someone who is follower of the inner path, called in Tibetan Nangpa. Ji Nang, Ji is outer, Nang is inner. Nangpa are those who follow the inner path. But that's the word in Tibetan that when that word is translated into English, is translated as Buddhist. Yeah? So Tibetan language don't have something that exactly translates to Buddhist. Literally it translates to the inner guys. Gals, guys, the inner people. What that means is followers of the inner path. As opposed to, chasing after external conditions. So a true Nangpa a true Buddhist with a small b, not the cultural label of Buddhist, but the true Buddhist with a small b. But ironically, the more important sense of being Buddhist is that we really understand, that suffering and happiness, bondage and liberation is an inside job. Yeah, it's an inside job. So we turn inside. Yeah. So that's taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is a reminder, that. And then here, this taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is done in what we call the Mahayana way, the great way. And what is the great way? The great way is, I do this for the sake of all wandering beings. See, you can go to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for refuge in a very limited way. Which, by the way, necessarily, we have to start there. The limited way. Which is, I don't want to remain in this mess, so I want out. So now I'm taking refuge. Reasonable. Yes, reasonable. But it won't take long, when you're in this for a while, just a little while, you'll begin to understand, actually, I can't just do this for myself. It's not going to work. It will only work if it is for the sake of all beings. So this refuge is said to be the great way, the universal way, great in that sense, universal way of taking refuge. Then the four immeasurable minds, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Equanimity, meaning cannot be moved. The first three of these four is very emotional. Love, love, compassion, joy, But all of these very emotional states have to be cultivated with stability. Equanimity is a sense of equal, a sense of stability. So it's not like emotional, shaky. It's a pervasive stability. It's equanimity. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Sanje Jodan Soki Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Junso Kibe Sonam Ki Drala Pincher Sanje Drubra Shu Sanje Jodan Soki Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Junso Kibe Sonam Ki Drala Pincher Sanje Drubra Shu Sanje Jodan Soki Chonamla Chanchu Bardu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Junso Kibe Sonam Ki Drala Pincher Sanje Drubra Shu Manang Kadang Nyampe Senjen Tamche Dewa Dan Dewen Gundan Tempura Gyurji Dungyao Dan Tungyao Gi Gyudan Dewa Gyurji Dungyao Mepe Dewa Dhamme Dewa Gyurji Niring Chadang Nidang Rawe Dangyong La Nebra Gyurji Manang Kadang Nyampe Senjen Tamche Dewa Dan Dewe Gundan Tempura Gyurji Dungyao Dang Dungyao Gi Gyudan Dewa Gyurji Dungyao Mepe Dewa Dhamme Dewa Gyurji Niring Chadang Nidang Rawe Dangyong La Nebra Gyurji Manang kadang nyambe senchen tamche dewa dang dewe gyundan dambra gyurji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudan dewa gyurji dungyao mepe dewa dhamme dewa gyurji niring chadang nidang dewa tanyong la nabra gyurji. Finally, the sevenfold puja on the page, top of page 8. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete bodhi. Wadan chujin shabadan jizu yirang kujing sowa ye gewa jungse dagi jisangba tamche zobe changju jirungu. Oh, good, Joseph is alive. Speaking of Joseph, put him on the spot. Before the pandemic, once a month, Joe used to invite the people in Asheville to hang out with him if they choose to at a local tea house in our neighborhood, where he spends a couple of hours looking at Tibetan. No, Joe never learned Tibetan formally, but he likes playing with words and language. I don't know. I'm putting him on the spot because I'm maybe trying to encourage him to revive this with the, group here. Hello, Joe. You want to say something?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that again. Actually, it used to be the first Monday of the month, and last Monday was the first time in a while I've done that just personally for myself, setting aside an evening to do that. So, yeah, yeah,
Can you
I've been
say
thinking about
what?
it more.
Can you say what you do, and can you say why it might be interesting for folks to consider doing? I
Yeah,
mean, it might be intimidating to some people, thinking that, oh, you're going to be learning Tibetan. Maybe you can say better what you do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like you say, I don't speak Tibetan at all, except for what we do in practice. And it really just came out of a desire to really want to know some basic keywords in our prayers. And so it took me a little bit, but I figured out how to basically do searches on my computer using the romanization of the words. And so it's a little tedious, but I just go through it word by word. I find a word in our text, I plug it in. Sometimes it's just half a word, it doesn't make any sense. I add the next part, sometimes there's a dash, when we're reciting. And so sometimes they go together, sometimes they're two words. And so it's not exciting necessarily, but bit by bit, you sort of build up a knowledge of some basic words. I have no sense of grammar. It's not to the level of like, oh, we're translating. It's more of just, oh, okay, that one means dharma. So every time when we get to the word dharma, reciting it in Tibetan, it comes up in your mind. So, and I feel pretty comfortable at the level of being very quick at just doing those little searches. And I also like this Tibetan script, so I've learned the stroke pattern of each of the characters. So I write everything back down in Tibetan too. With maybe in 5 years that I'll be able to actually look at Tibetan and be like, oh, that's that word that I know. I'm not there yet either. And I knew I had to give myself some time, so it's one time a month, and it's just enough to keep that sort of flame alive. And it really helped when people would come out and do that with me, sort of keep me going, keep me honest, and not just sort of push it off 1 month. And so, yeah, it is possible to do online. But I have to think a little bit more carefully about presenting it to the group of how it would be how it would make sense to do it. There would have to be a Zoom going, and you'd also have to have another device to do the other end of the project. But yeah, I'll definitely think about it more, and maybe make a post on the website, the protected area of the website, to see if there is any interest on there.
Yeah, some brainstorming, some people. So the point, I think, is that no, it's not to, translate anything. It's not to say, oh, I know Tibetan, but it's to support the chance that we do. You're beginning to pick up vocabulary, basically, more than anything. So it's a way to kind of, season the mind with some of these words. So yeah, it's so that's one thing. Yeah.
Can I say
Yeah.
something? So I really enjoy doing the Tibetan chanting, and I feel like it's a connection to the lineage. When I was a little kid, and I would go to church, and the priest would chant in Latin, and it felt like only he had access, nobody else did, and we have access, and I love it.
Good.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah,
Yes.
I feel like it's another connection.
Yes.
And if Joseph is going to do something, I'd be interested in taking part.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll just say another word on that. It's interesting how the language can be sort of this. It can feel very intimate, like you're saying, where on the other hand, it can feel very off-putting and distancing and arm's length. And it's interesting when that switch happens, that suddenly it's, oh, this is a very intimate language, and maybe this, what I've been doing has helped feed that feeling in me too, of like, oh, I have a deeper connection to this. My muscles have written the language and made that. So like I said, I'll come up with sort of how I think it would best work, and I'll post that on those group chat area of the website.
Good. So now let's go to the Tara text. Page 1, yeah. Jesan pama thoma dhan chuju dusun shubaye gyawa seje tamche la une dangwe chase lo meto dupo mame de shoshe romo la song bang unju itu tu nebo pame tsonam shesu so thoma mene date bar mige chudan tsammenga semni nyomo wangyurbe dipa tamje shabarage ninto rangya chanju sem soso gebo laso be dusun gewa jisang be sonam lani dayera semchen namgi sampada loyi jitra jitawa jechun tumon tepayi choki korlo kordu so korwa jise matongba nyangye mida tuje ye dunya gyasore jingwa ye senche namla shiksu so dagi sona jisangba tamche changchu gyugyu ne rinpo mito droba ye rinpe beldu dagyu ju. So this is one version of the sevenfold puja. And this is not the most common version chanted. The most common version of the sevenfold puja chanted comes from this longer aspiration prayer called the King of Aspiration Prayers of Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. By the way, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are two figures called Samantabhadra. There is Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva. There is Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha. So please, you should know that, because embarrassingly, I see people, like making these flyers or posters, so-and-so Lama is going to be explaining the Samantabhadra's aspiration prayer, the King of Noble Aspiration Prayers, and then they, take a picture of the Buddha Samantabhadra. Or, to further confuse things, there is a dharma called the aspiration of Samantabhadra. So sometimes when the Lama is explaining that dharma, they use a picture of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Yeah. So the Buddha Samantabhadra is the naked Buddha. Yeah. No ornaments, anything, sort of to express the Dharmakaya state. No ornaments, no decoration, just naked, white in color. Or is it blue in color? I don't know. But Samantabhadra, the Buddha figure. Then the King of Aspiration Prayers is the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. So from that aspiration prayer, the first 12 verses is the most commonly chanted sevenfold puja. Yeah? Then the second most commonly known, but quite a distant, is this one that we just did. And this one, the tradition attributes this sevenfold puja to Bhikshuni Shri, which is in Tibetan Gelongma Pelmo, one of the great Mahasiddhas of, 9th, 10th century. She was a princess that then became this great Mahasiddha, Gelongma Pelmo. She is the origin of quite a number of different lineages, the most famous being the Nyungne practice, which is this fasting and prostration practice focus on Avalokiteshvara. So the Nyungne purification fasting practice originates from Gelongma Pelmo. So the tradition attributes this particular sevenfold puja, this version, to her. So in this one, there's exactly 7 verses for the 7 elements. So on page 1, the first one: utterly and sincerely I pay homage to exalted noble Tara and all the conquerors and their heirs, dwelling in the 10 directions and 3 times. Conquerors and their heirs means Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Literally, the victors, the conquerors, and their sons. Here, sons really have nothing to do with gender. Here, sons is based on the, kind of imperial system of ancient India, whereby kings or emperors are succeeded by sons. Yeah. So, in order to be more neutral, I've chosen the word heirs. So the idea is, whoever legitimately succeeds Buddhas, who will become the next king, heirs in that sense. So all the conquerors and their heirs, dwelling in the 10 directions and 3 times. Just in case you're like, 10 directions? What's that? Well, it's that 4 cardinal plus the inter. So you get 8, right? Then top and bottom. That's how you get 10. Yeah. So that's paying homage is the first element. Second element, making offerings. I offer flowers, incense, lamps, fragrant scents, food, music, and the like, physically and mentally conjured. So physically, you know, whatever you arrange as offerings on your shrine or on a special occasion, you set up something and you arrange, you know, physically and mentally conjured. So here it's saying, you know, use your mind to conjure up, kind of like magic, right? Use your mind to magically bring forth all these offerings and you offer. Why do we do that? It's not as like mysterious or magical, or like some might say, this is some kind of Vajrayana stuff. This is essentially based on the very opening verses of the Dhammapada, where it says, you know, the mind is the originator of all experiences. So if our minds are constantly conjuring up suffering, conjuring up worries, conjuring up problems, conjuring up that which is wrong, conjuring up that which is lacking, then that's the reality that we have built for ourselves. So here, you use your mind to magically bring forth offerings that you give away. So this is not some kind of like prosperity gospel, you know, like think positive and lots of money will come to you. This is like think great things, think offerings, you know, and then give them away. Offer them. Here, of course, you're offering them to the noble lady and her complete retinue. Please accept them. Yeah. Why do you offer to the noble lady? Why do you offer to Tara? Because she is the essence of all that we desire. Because she embodies all the Buddha qualities that we aspire to. So it's in admiration of those qualities, right? So we make offerings to her. And in making offerings to her and her retinue, we create the conditions for those qualities to arise in ourselves. Kyopa Jigten Samgun, in his teachings, he says, you know, you should skillfully take possession of all the things that nobody owns. Now, this context, when he says nobody owns, it's pretty straightforward. It simply means, you know, nobody has a legal claim over. That doesn't belong to anyone. So what does he mean? What he's referring to is whatever you see in nature that doesn't belong to anyone. He says what you should do is you should skillfully, so this is the key word, skillfully take them. Why? He says you take them, you offer them. It sounds like, you know, some kind of superficially it sounds like, oh yeah, another ritual. But I feel, I've experienced psychologically, it's a very skillful way of relating to our experiences. Again, this is emphasizing, you know, this is sort of like we naturally go around, you know, grabbing, whether actually, like physically, or mentally, we're grasping, you know. And often when we're grasping, it's motivated by the three poisons. But here when he says skillfully take all that doesn't belong to anyone in particular, like the playground, you know, he says take it. And so when you take it, you know, you're like, oh, isn't that greedy? But you take it so that you can offer it. So I think if we really pay attention to just the simple practice of taking, that doesn't belong to anyone in particular, pay attention to like when we take, you know. When we take, probably, you know, a sense of delight. See, that part is not negative. But if we take it in order to deprive others from having it, then of course it's negative. But in this case, you know, you mentally take, you will not. You know you're not depriving anyone from also taking it. Then more importantly, the next step is you offer it. And in my understanding of what's going on here, it's really training in taking up, letting go. Taking up, letting go. It's really training us in a subtle way, by osmosis, bit by bit, the ability to let go. We go about taking in our life, rather without awareness, without mindfulness. We just take. Then when the nature of impermanence strikes, you know, we become so devastated when what we have taken is no longer available now. But if we train this kind of taking in order to give mentally take, mentally give, mentally take, mentally give, mentally take, mentally give, it's exercising this ability to happily give, so that when impermanence strikes, we can happily let go. I feel this is how it's working. There's so many elements here, you know, right? The earlier element of like giving, knowing that you're giving to Tara and her retinue, and in admiration of her qualities. So then those qualities, the realization of those qualities, you plant the seeds for that. Then it's also a training in the sense of taking, giving, taking, giving, taking, giving, in terms of the mentally conjured. From beginningless time until now, the 10 non-virtues and 5 heinous sins, 5 heinous misdeeds, arisen from the mind under the power of afflictive emotions, power of kleshas, all these misdeeds, dikpa, all these misdeeds, I lay them bare. Dikpa tamche shakpa. So this is often translated as confession, but it's better to kind of more literally, shakpa is to expose, to uncover. To expose, to uncover. As the emphasis here is that not hiding our unskillful actions, our harmful actions. Because if we keep hiding, you know, so in the end, who are we exposing these actions to? To ourselves. To ourselves. Specifically, the 10 non-virtues. 3 non-virtues that are physically created, 4 non-virtues that are verbally created, and 3 non-virtues that are mentally created. That makes 10. 10 is just a general categorization of non-virtues. 10 non-virtues. But Trust me, there's more than 10 non-virtues. The 10 non-virtues are just the general categories of non-virtuous actions. 3 of the body is killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The 4 of speech is deceptive speech, destructive speech, divisive speech, and distracting speech. I translated them into the 4 Ds, easier to remember. Deceptive, lying. Destructive, harmful words, out of like contempt, out of anger, we say harmful, hurtful things. Destructive speech. Divisive speech, saying things to one person to pitch them against the other person, sowing discord. That's divisive speech. Often, translated like as gossip, but it's basically divisive speech. Then the 4th, distracting speech, is usually translated as idle talk. But the issue there really with idle talk is distracted speech. It's just blah, 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 blah. Sometimes we call shooting the breeze. Then you're like, what is shooting the breeze? Why? What's wrong with it? Well, in a way, shooting the breeze, like distracted speech, like just blah, 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 not thinking before we say things, right? That often is the source of a lot of problems when groups of people are gathered. If you have distracted speech, if you have like endless, mindless chatter all by yourself, probably not so bad. But if you're chattering with each other, then other people overhear what you're chattering about. But they really have no idea the people you are talking about. But then you already kind of brainwashed them, right? About these other people that they have not even met yet. Whereas you and your friend might actually know that person very well, and you can contextualize what you're saying about this person. An innocent bystander who happens to, hear what you guys are talking about and not knowing anything about that person will come up with some kind of crazy idea about who this person is. See how we have already caused harm. And sometimes it's even with someone that both you two are talking about, that you are actually very good friends with that person. But seemingly harmless, mindless, blah, 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 can lead to kind of ruining other people's reputation. So to be careful of that. The 5 heinous sins here is talking about the 5 types of actions that the Buddha specifically pointed out. Says that these 5 types of actions, if you create them, the negative karma of these 5 types of actions ripens like instantly. The suffering that comes from these 5 types of actions is instantaneous. It's really heinous, which is killing your father, killing your mother, killing an arhat, injuring a Buddha. You're like, hey, what about killing a Buddha? Well, apparently you cannot kill a Buddha, according to the rules of engagement. It's impossible for anyone to kill a Buddha. At most, you can cause a Buddha to literally, the expression literally is to shed the blood of a Buddha. Yeah? That's the 4th. And the 5th is to instigate, to cause the splitting of the monastic sangha. That's the 5th. So these are the 5 heinous actions. In the Losar program, the 15-16 days of 35 Buddhas purification practice, practice of laying bare with the 35 Buddhas as witness, we will look more into this. It's basically about karma and the categories of actions, the consequences of those actions, so on and so forth. So, arisen from the mind under the power of the afflictive emotions. All these misdeeds, I lay them bare. I rejoice in the merit of all the virtues accumulated in the 3 times, past, present, future, 3 times, by hearers, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings, and so forth. If the previous element is about uncovering unskillful actions and then making the determination to free yourself from that, this is sort of like the other side of this process, which is to then, here you lay bare unskillful actions, here you recognize the skillful actions and the good that is happening around you. A lot of times, with regards to these two, we do the complete opposite. We hide our faults, we go fault finding in other people. That is the source of misery. So here, these two is getting us to do just the opposite. Expose your own faults, but not in the, expose your own faults, see how horrible a person you are, how terrible you are. No, not that, not that kind of religious guilt, as I was saying earlier. Yeah? No. In a way, you can say, I dare to expose my faults because I know that these faults are temporary, accidental, incidental, or we call it adventitious stains. Because what is more true than all this crap is Buddha nature. So when you're confident, when you're confident, then there is no fear in exposing your faults. Because you know that those faults are incidental, accidental, adventitious, and therefore not part of who you really are. You can let them go. So you do that, right? Then simultaneously, you also want to learn to see the qualities of others. All the way from hearers, arhats, the Pratyeka Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, and even ordinary beings and so forth. Anyone and everyone learn to see the good that exists in them. Because when you see that, then this is so-called perceiving purity. So these two work hand in hand. Exposing our own faults, learning to recognize the good that we see all around us. Yeah. I thought I saw someone asking a question or raising a hand. Is that accidental? Or maybe just pause here and see. Any questions? Comments, questions?
Yes, I didn't understand which are the 10 directions.
Oh, north, south, east, west, in between, up, down, 10.
Okay.
Right? Right? North, south, east, west, in between, right? Up and down, 10. The usual 8 plus up and down, 10. meaning everywhere.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's expressed as throughout space and time without limit.
So what is the rest of that, where it says 3 times, dwelling in the 10 directions and 3 times?
Past, present, future?
Oh, you just said that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, throughout time and space, Very common, this expression 3 times, Not like do it 3 times, like these 3 concepts of, present, past, future.
This is just a detail, but the name of the nun who is attributed
Yeloma
to
Pelmo, yeah.
how do you say it again?
It's there, it's in the text.
It's in the text,
Oh, yeah.
the beginning.
No, at the end, page 4 of that section.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Yeloma Pelmo is set to compose this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bhikshuni Shri.
Okay. Look her up.
Yeah, so then next is requesting the Buddha, in this case Tara, to teach the Dharma. This verse of request to teach Dharma, this is used very often. At the beginning of any teaching, there is this tradition of requesting the teacher to teach. This verse is recited. Please turn the wheel of Dharma, of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles. So often we say there are 3 vehicles, yeah? Actually, more commonly what you come across in the original text is 2 vehicles. The lesser vehicle and the greater vehicle. Within the greater vehicle, it can be further divided into the perfection vehicle and the secret mantra vehicle. So that it's not really 3 vehicles. Most of the original text talks about 2 vehicles, and those 2 vehicles is distinguished by the scope of your motivation. It's the lesser vehicle when the scope of your motivation, when you're motivated by a individual scope. So it's lesser vehicle. Hinayana. It's the greater vehicle when you are motivated by a universal concern for all beings. So one or universal makes it lesser vehicle or greater vehicle. Then within the greater vehicle, there is the perfection vehicle style or level of practice, and then there is the secret mantra level of practice. So then, please turn the wheel of Dharma, please teach the Dharma of the greater and lesser and common vehicles, meaning the teachings that are common to both greater and lesser. That is equally shared by the greater and the lesser vehicle. But teach these in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Whatever is most appropriate for the ability, the disposition of beings to help them progress along freedom from confusion, please teach accordingly. So here it might be a good kind of chance for me to say a little bit more. There's a lot of confusion in the use of these terms, Hinayana and Mahayana. Hinayana and Mahayana. And then, of course, Vajrayana. Yeah. So, a quick lesson in Buddhist history. Now I mean objective Buddhist history. I don't mean traditional Buddhist history. Traditional Buddhist history is what you will hear from traditionally trained Buddhist teachers. Then each of their tradition have their way of talking about what happened. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. Now, quickly, what I'm talking about is kind of objectively, yeah, if we look at the development of Buddhist traditions, yeah. During the early period, these words, Hinayana, Mahayana, did not exist. Yeah. At a certain point, close to like the beginning of the Common Era, that means around the time of Jesus Christ, yeah, around that time, we see the evidence of certain Buddhist texts referring to certain other groups of Buddhists as Hinayana, as followers of the lesser way, the lesser vehicle. And these texts call themselves Mahayana, greater vehicle. Yeah? So to that degree, historically, there were groups who called themselves Mahayana and called other people Hinayana. Now, mind you, whoever got called Hinayana never went around going, yes, Hinayana. Because it basically means, you know, the small guys. Or more literally, like, or not so literally, but the meaning is like petty, small. Yeah. So originally it's an insulting term. Okay. Now fast forward. What about Tibetan Buddhism? When these terms turn up in Tibetan Buddhism, Hinayana, Mahayana. Tibetan Buddhism, its main intellectual standpoint is informed by, chiefly influenced by, what His Holiness the Dalai Lama calls the Nalanda tradition of Indian Buddhism. The Nalanda tradition of Indian Buddhism is centered in this great Indian Buddhist university called Nalanda. Nalanda represents the height of Buddhist culture in India. And part of what happened at Nalanda University over a long period of time is a certain understanding of Buddhist history and all the different types of Buddhism that has occurred in the past. What happened in the Nalanda tradition is this understanding that developed that considered all the differences in the past as ultimately non-contradictory. That in fact, all these differences in the past and all the different scriptures that these different groups accepted and rejected, right? Because some groups only accepted these texts, some groups don't accept those texts, right? The Nalanda tradition said, no. All of them are valid. Now, of course, when you say all of them are valid, you're like, wait a minute. This Buddha guy, you know, here saying this, there saying that, there saying this, here saying that, right? So the Nalanda tradition also figure out a comprehensive organizational principle. And one of those principles is to divide Buddha's teachings into Hinayana and Mahayana. In Nalanda tradition, Hinayana no longer has the connotation of bad, petty, and small. In Nalanda tradition, Hinayana is explained as the individual beginning. That you necessarily have to start there. That your practice has to be grounded in you individually deciding, I want out. I want to jailbreak samsara. So that's the Hinayana. So it said renunciation, the determination to be free, is the essence of the Hinayana foundation. Then upon this Hinayana foundation, you build the Mahayana motivation. In other words, there is no second floor without first floor. There is no Mahayana without Hinayana. So now Hinayana and Mahayana, the relationship is no longer these small petty people over here, oh, we the great ones over here. But rather, both of these have to be me. I have to first be convinced that this is samsara and I am determined to be free. Hinayana. Focus on I. But on the basis of focusing on I, you develop a greater understanding that the real solution is not an individual solution. The real solution can only come from being concerned about the welfare of all beings. Then that's the birth of the Mahayana motivation. Yeah? So a side footnote, because many Tibetan teachers, now that they have been exposed to the rest of the world, to other Buddhist traditions, right? And then they've heard, from other people, Buddhists in Sri Lanka, Burma, and Thailand, they do not like to be called Hinayana. Of course, because, first of all, the Buddhist traditions in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, they self-identify as Theravada. Theravada developed in Sri Lanka based on lineage transmission from India. But the Theravada identity formed in Sri Lanka. The lineage that came from India was in fact at some point labeled as Hinayana by those Mahayana people. Remember? Beginning of the Common Era? Yeah, they sort of label the ancestors of the Theravada as Hinayana. But of course, the descendants of these groups, never accepted that they are Hinayana. And in fact, their own kind of label is Theravada, which is in the Pali language. In Sanskrit is Stavira Vada. Stavira or Thera means elders, the elders. So they call themselves the tradition of the elders. We follow the tradition of the elders. That's their own identity, right? And so they say, no, we do not accept this label Hinayana, Okay, now Tibetan teachers exposed to other Buddhist groups, then they say, oh yes, these monks in Thailand, Sri Lanka, Burma, they don't like to be called Hinayana, so we should call them Theravada. And that's fine and good. But you cannot substitute, I feel, the category of Hinayana in Tibetan Buddhist texts with the word Theravada. Yeah, this is not just about political correctness, because this is like inaccurate. Because the Tibetan designation of Hinayana has very little to do with Theravada. By definition, Hinayana is a motivation that is only focused on the individual. Yeah? In the Theravada system, they have the Bodhisattva path. Yeah, they talk about the 10 parami, what we call paramitas. They talk about the Bodhisattva. It's just that in Theravada, they don't say everybody needs to become a Bodhisattva. But they certainly have their own teachings on how to become a Bodhisattva and how to become a Buddha. So by that definition, how are they Hinayana? They are not Hinayana. Because they have teachings on how to become Bodhisattva. So it's inaccurate, you know. So I prefer not to substitute. You keep Hinayana as Hinayana when you are looking at Tibetan texts. Because they're not talking about an existing Buddhist tradition. They are talking about the foundations of our practice. And if you change it to Theravada, you know, then it doesn't make sense, you know. And then if you say, oh, as your foundation, you have to practice Theravada, then it's like, oh, so now I have to learn Pali?
It gets corrupted.
What?
It gets corrupted.
What gets corrupted?
If you take Theravada and you switch it, okay, if you take Hinayana and you switch it to Theravada, it gets corrupted.
It's not really an issue of corruption. It's just confusion.
Yeah, corrupted, confusion.
The confusion is enough, you know. Corruption has all kinds of connotations. You could go in many directions. The issue is not so much, you know, I'm not emphasizing purity. Corruption is related to purity. I'm emphasizing clarity, you know. Like in our efforts to be polite, you know, we might actually end up being insulting. If we identify Theravada as somehow Hinayana, even if we do not call them out and say Hinayana, Hinayana, effectively we are saying, oh, all that you are is just, you know, our basic foundation. Yeah, so that then, you know, we're misrepresenting, you know. So it's a little complicated, but this is the fact of the world has become so small, you know. So we need to our head of Drigung Kyabgon, he likes to, sometimes he says to his own people, you know, he says, we Tibetans, you know, no longer live in this little well, like a bunch of frogs, you know, hopping around in this little well and think that, you know, this is the world. He says, you know, we have to see, you know, there are other people too, you know, and then there are other Buddhists, you know, and they have different understanding about things. So this is a long footnote, yeah, on these terms, yeah, greater vehicle, lesser vehicle. The key point is, whenever in our practice text, in the Tibetan text, when they talk about greater, lesser, don't think of some other Buddhist tradition. Now, especially people in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, you know, we have the habit of saying, calling the Chinese tradition Mahayana. then we are politically correct enough that we do not call the Sri Lankans Hinayana. But in our minds, we think like that, oh, they are Hinayana. But politely, we won't say out in our mouth, Then we think, oh, Chinese, oh, that is Mahayana. Then we think, oh, we who practice Tibetan Buddhism, we are Vajrayana. So instantly, you are standing like on top of this mountain and looking down at everybody else. We got to be careful about that, So there's one issue, right? This is the issue of like perhaps pride when you don't even know that it's going on. But even more important than this issue is that if we don't understand that within the Tibetan system, you have to practice Hinayana. No, that doesn't mean, now I have to go learn Theravada. No. Within the practice of Tibetan Buddhism, the foundation of your practice has to be what is called Hinayana. The essence of that is a determination to be free. And there in the so-called Hinayana, all the fundamental issues are laid out clearly. So particularly in Drigong Kagyu, the founder, Kyopa Jigten Sumgön, he always turns things around. Even in the 12th century, already he's always pointing out, he says, the higher teachings collapse when the lower teachings are undermined. This is very different from some other traditions that says, when you have the higher, you don't need the lower. And that the higher vows trump the lower vows. The higher vows and the emphasis of the higher vows can cancel out whatever lower vows that contradict the higher vows. That's a very standard, like Tibetan Buddhist explanation in a lot of other traditions. In Jigten Sumgön, he says, it's not possible. First of all, he says, it's not possible that there is a higher vow that would cancel out a lower vow. It may seem like that to you, but that's because you don't understand how these two contexts are related, first of all. And secondly, he says, even if you are able, even if, if you try to use a higher vow to undercut a lower vow, then what you are then doing actually is standing on the second floor, you get a bulldozer to knock down the first floor. Yeah, standing on the second floor or third floor, you yell down there, hey, I don't need the first floor anymore. Just bulldoze it away. He says, no, he says, the fundamental floor is where the main core things are revealed there, are introduced there. Everything else that comes afterwards are elaborations of that basic point that was already made. Everything else that comes later, all the higher vehicles, all the higher sets of vows, they are all elaborations of the basic. Right? It's a unique emphasis of Kyopa Jigten Sumgön. So famously, he said, what is not profound for other people, I consider to be truly profound. I consider to be truly profound. So in this context of, the so-called Hinayana and Mahayana, then the Hinayana, where the Four Noble Truths are taught, where the true cause of suffering is taught, and the true happiness is taught, that is where, if we need to be very clear. Then, whatever higher stuff that you learn and practice can enhance the realization of what is taught on the ground level. And so this is really important, yeah? Until samsara has been completely emptied out of compassion, do not pass into nirvana. Please have regard for sentient beings sinking in this ocean of suffering. So we ask Tara, don't give up on us. Don't leave us behind. Of course, Tara will not do that. The Buddhists do not do that. So here, in part, what it's saying is, don't take Dharma for granted. And by extension, don't take where we learn Dharma from for granted. Even Buddhists, we have to ask, we have to request. So this is a little bit uncomfortable, for me standing here to be saying things like this. But it's also not right if I don't say this, because then what are you going to learn? We cannot take our Dharma teachers for granted. Even Buddhists, whose only reason they exist is for the benefit of others, we still have to say, please don't leave us behind. Please teach us. Please guide us. Which is saying to us, we cannot take our teachers for granted. Yeah, of course, if they are really teachers, as in not just by name teacher or by title teacher, but they really care for us as teachers, in any case, they won't give up on us. But everything is interdependence, Even if they don't give up on us, if we don't care about them not giving up on us, then essentially we have cast them aside. So it's about interdependence, yeah? It's not about, like the burden is only on the students. No, it's also not true. Again, Kyoba Jigten in one of his statements, we call Vajra statements, he says, when it comes to the Samaya, this word, a big word, when it comes to Samaya, which is a Vajrayana way of talking about the vows that we keep. But specifically here, Samaya in this context is talking about the obligations between teacher and student. In the Vajrayana context, he says, when it comes to Samaya, he says, the burden is upheld by both teacher and student, not just student. So a real teacher cannot go around, saying, hey, watch your Samaya, hey, watch your Samaya, hey, watch your Samaya, hey, watch your Samaya, hey, watch your Samaya. It's the interdependence between the teacher and the student. Both sides have to uphold. If one side lets that down, then both sides get harmed as well. So cut away all the scary stuff, because there's a lot of scary stuff in Vajrayana circles. I'm really very adverse to that kind of nonsense, because none of my teachers communicate this kind of scary stuff to me. Maybe I just have a strange group of teachers. None of my teachers convey this scary stuff. But I go around and I see, including their centers, somehow their students pick up these like scary stuff from other places and then, spread it around and use this Samaya thing like to kind of control each other. You know, it's very unhealthy. Right? It's just dysfunctional family stuff coming into sanghas. Yeah? So, Gajan Rinpoche, you know, he says, Samaya is love. That's it. I have to admit, you know, Gajan Rinpoche is, you know, he's not, by his own admission, you know. I mean, of course, he's very humble, but it's also literally true. His training was interrupted because of Cultural Revolution. So he never learned a lot of formal Buddhist training. But of course, his is coming from his own really practice and realization. So he will say, you know, I don't know a lot of the academic details. Yeah. And so sometimes when you hear him say, oh, Samaya is love, you know, including myself, I'm confessing, including myself, I say, actually, Samaya means da 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 da, right? Yeah, because I've read enough, you know. I said, well, actually, you know, it's not just love, you know. Yeah. So it's like, you know, because sometimes it turns into like, you know, February 14 becomes like Samaya Day, you know. Oh, it's love. Oh, Valentine's Day, Samaya Day. Oh, God, you know. No, it's not that, right? So sometimes, you know, I have to confess, I'm like, no, Rinpoche, don't say that. But really, when you get to the heart of it, it is that, right? So love is mutual. Love is mutual. True love has to be mutual. Otherwise, you know, it's a stalker, you know, it's not a, it's not a lover, it's someone stalking you, yeah? Love has to be mutual. Mutually caring for each other. And that cannot be forced. That cannot be intimidated into. But just like love, Samaya can be so easily perverted. Just as, you know, ordinary love and dysfunctional love, people use it to control each other. So that statement, Samaya is love, has more than what meets the eye at the beginning. When you're beginning to understand that there's also all these kind of like, when you truly get into a relationship of trusting each other, yeah, it's not easy. Does it mean you don't fight? No, I mean, gosh, right? But it means that, you know, it doesn't mean that you should fight. You know, we're not saying you should fight. It means that even when you fight, you know, you don't give up on each other because you really care about each other. Yeah, so love not in like that pink gooey sense of love, you know, but the deep abiding love that arises. That is the kind of bond. So when the text say, you know, when you break your Samaya, you'll go to Vajra hell and blah, 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 all that, you know. I mean, forget about, you know, these like scary things called hell. But yeah, when a love is broken, everyone involved, you know, whether it's a family that used to love each other, when that love is broken, it doesn't really matter anymore who broke it. Everybody suffers. In the same way, when they say that in the Vajrayana context, the teacher and the students, you know, I don't mean like here. So to be clear, you know, I am a teacher, but I am not guru to you guys. Yeah, I'm a teacher. Yeah, the guru business, that's something else, you know. That's something else. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about that kind of samaya. But it doesn't mean that then that kind of samaya has no implications on how you and I relate to each other. So even if I'm not guru to you, we should collectively think, Jigten Sumgun is our guru. So then we are in the same family. So we do our best, right, to not break that love. Yeah, even if, I don't see myself as guru to you guys, But we are all in the Vajra family of the Kagyu gurus. And so we have to guard Samaya in that sense. And also, it is impossible to break Samaya when you don't have Samaya. Yeah, you cannot break something that you don't have. And you will not accidentally have Samaya, okay? Yeah, if you have no idea, just walked into something called an empowerment, and then after that, at the end, because the tradition says, according to the text, the Lama has to say this. Okay, now you have Samaya, blah, 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 and then you're standing like, uh-oh, what did I just do? You do not accidentally get married, Much less, something like Samaya. Just because you turn up at a church, and somebody say, I do, and you go, oh, I do. You don't accidentally get married. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people will say that, oh, you have Samaya with this Lama, because you came to the empowerment, da, 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 da. I don't believe that. I'm not saying, therefore, you should abuse the Lama or be rude, But you don't get Samaya so easily. You don't form Samaya so easily. Yeah, Samaya comes from the heart. And once it has arisen in the heart, mutually it has arisen in the heart, then guard it like you guard your own eyes, because when that gets broken, it doesn't matter who breaks it, everybody suffers. Yeah, that's why, Kyuvarin Bache says, Samaya is upheld by both sides. So if we get to the point of saying, oh, Samaya is broken because of you, that's already wrong. That's already not understanding, When it comes to Samaya, it really doesn't matter who broke it. Once it's broken, and everybody suffers. And this everybody suffers is not because there's a Buddhist God going, you did a very terrible thing, Now you should burn in hell. A lot of us carry that baggage, You might have stopped going to the Baptist church. Yeah. Your Baptist religion has not left you. Fear of hellfire. Whatever virtue I may have gathered, may it become a cause for the awakening of all. May I quickly become an excellent guide for all wandering beings. What a beautiful dedication, right? I particularly like whatever virtue I may have gathered. Right? It doesn't say, these perfect virtues that I have gathered. It says, whatever virtue I may have gathered. Dagisonam chisakpa. Whatever, whatever that has been gathered. So what does that mean? Of course, there are different ways. Yeah? To me, what it means is something is better than nothing. Again, maybe because of the strange combination of teachers that I have had the good fortune of learning from, their attitude to Dharma practice is something is always better than nothing. You cannot do 100%? How about 1%? Can you do 1%? Oh, can? Okay, good, come. Oh, this is 100%. Oh, you cannot do 100%? What about 50? 50? Okay, good, come. Yeah. All the way down to 1%. Oh, 1%? Okay, come. Do. Just do. Something is always better than nothing. So whatever virtue. So with regards to our practice, again, some baggage from maybe our previous religious traditions, or things that you picked up from even like Buddhist places, Buddhist teachers, I think in their effort, right, to impress upon us, how wonderful it is if we can do everything 100%. We become intimidated and afraid. Oh, if I cannot do 100%, I will not do it. Because if I do it wrong, I would go to the hell realms. If Buddha taught anything, that can lead to the hell realms, then there is something wrong there. What determines the quality of our actions is our heart. Even 1% of wanting to benefit beings brings about the result of 1% of benefiting beings. As long as you're not like relating to a practice by saying, I want to do this practice so that I can destroy my enemies. As long as you're not motivated like that, then even if I cannot do, 100,000. Oh, how about 10? You can do 10? Ooh, very good, 10. 10 is better than 0. Yeah, so don't be so hard on yourselves, Don't be so hard on yourselves. You set up too high, and that's like ego. I want this, I want this, I want this, Then you cannot do it, then you give up everything. And don't do that. And don't do that. Whatever virtue I may have gathered, may it become a cause for the awakening of all. See, even if it is a very small virtue, if it is dedicated to a big cause, the result is big. Now, we'll look at the 35 Buddha Confession, It says in there, even offering one morsel of food to an ant, I dedicate this to the awakening of all. Then the merit is huge. You could offer a whole kingdom away, but only for your own benefit. Then the merit is small. You can do 100,000 prostrations for your own egocentric reasons. Yeah. Oh, because, if I do that, people will respect me. I finished my Ngondro. I finished my 3-year retreat. Ooh, I get to be called Lama now. Yeah. Useless. But one Om Mani Padme Hum said, really, for benefiting all beings, the effect of that surpasses 100,000 prostrations done for your own self. This is the meaning of this, Whatever virtue I may have gathered, even if it is just a little, may it become a cause for the awakening of all. Now it has become really big. And with this, may I quickly become an excellent guide for all wandering beings. May I become truly helpful, truly beneficial to all beings. It's such a vast view, you know. Good? Questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Back to the Hinayana, Mahayana, and the Vajrayana.
Yes.
Okay, the Hinayana is for getting out of samsara. 2 is devotion.
Renunciation.
Enunciation.
Renunciation.
Renunciation. And the Mahayana is a devotion. Getting
No. Caring about all beings.
all beings. And then what's the Vajrayana?
Vajrayana is the swift path to achieve that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, the super weapon to destroy self-cherishing. Oh, so good to see the 2 C's in Boulder. Do you have a lot of snow?
Yes.
Which
We were
is
skiing.
what?
We were skiing. We're actually staying at a friend's house to ski for the week.
Oh, okay. But in Boulder, how much snow do you have when you left? What?
1 foot of snow, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nothing, you know.
Nothing. Yeah, Boulder, Colorado, for those of you who don't know, basically, when winter comes, you never see the ground until spring.
It's been too warm this year, actually.
Oh, really?
Maybe like the rest of the world, yeah.
Oh, no. We've been getting a lot of snow in Nashville.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Well, when you guys get snow, it's like a news event. So
Yeah, you know.
MSNBC just like stops focusing on politics and just goes to the snow.
Yes, it's snow. Hello. Scary stuff.
We'll get some Saturday.
What? No, I don't want more.
We'll get some Saturday. Either that or ice.
It's every weekend. It seems we've been getting snow. Actually, it's been very nice. It's the kind of snow where it's very calming and, you know, kind of like beautiful and, you know, not a nuisance.
Unless you're driving on mountain roads, then not so much.
Well, then you drive on mountain roads and you get to meditate on impermanence. Woohoo! Yes.
Hi, thank you. So I have a question about why renunciation is needed before you have bodhicitta, and it's very innocent the way I think about it. Well, very naively. So it seems sometimes that when you suffer, the only way to get rid of, to move over, when you stop caring so much about your suffering sometimes and look after the people around you, your family, friends, I don't know. So it seems to me that how, like, progressing on a, just, I'm gonna phrase it simply, like being a better person, whatever that means here, and I cannot be specific. It seems that it's only possible for others, so I don't understand how could there be Hinayana? How could there be individual motivation to move over?
Individual motivation means you recognize, you know, and you understand, oh, this is where suffering comes from. Ah, okay. Where the suffering come from? Comes from yourself. So even if, you know, if you're suffering so much and you just think, oh, let me think about my family, right? Okay, that's good. But then if you think about your family and you think, oh, suffering comes from those neighbors over there. Now you caring for your family will cause you a lot of suffering. If you think suffering comes from those neighbors over there causing suffering for my family, then actually, you know, a lot of people create a lot of negative karma protecting their own family, not even protecting themselves, you know. So Hinayana is about seeing clearly, where does suffering come from? Oh, it comes from afflictive emotions. Yeah? And afflictive emotions are so dreadful, so heavy. Yeah? So it's nothing, you don't need to think too like abstract or philosophical about it. It's just simply saying, you have to see how this problem, where it came from, and you have to recognize, yeah, this really sucks. And I don't want this. Right? Then from there, yeah, from there, the Buddha says, so what is the root? What is the root? What is the root afflictive emotion? Self-grasping. That is when you go, oh, so actually, being too obsessed with my own problems is part of the problem. Then, very naturally, you adopt the Mahayana. But necessarily, you have to start on the individual level. Most of us are not even at the Hinayana level. Most of us are not even Nangpa, which is what's commonly called Buddhist. Remember Nangpa? Those who follow the inner way. Those who understand that happiness and suffering is an inside job. Most of us, most of our day, we are not even Nangpa. You know, when we're in a bad mood, when we are suffering, you know, quite instinctively we think it's because of the weather, it's because of the pandemic, it's because I have too much, because I have too little, We never see, hey, actually, this mind, this mind is where all of this is arising and ceasing, you know. Then you say, I don't want this. Now, of course, how do you not want this? That is the beginning of the Mahayana. So there are no contradictions between the yanas. Again, you know, in some other traditions, when they teach this, they draw very firm lines, you know, oh, this is Hinayana, oh, this is Mahayana, oh, this is Vajrayana. Kyopa Jigten doesn't do that. He says everything is always, you know, part of everything else in terms of the Buddha's methods. He says you cannot pull this one out and say, I will just do this. Or pull this out and say, oh, I will just do this. His approach is, it's always a comprehensive system. It's always all the elements working to balance each other out, because that's the program that the Buddha has given us. And so he de-emphasizes, like drawing these lines. Oh, this is Hinayana. Oh, this is Mahayana. Oh, this is Vajrayana, you know. Yes. Samantha?
Thanks. About the, it's in the last line. It says all wandering beings, but Is that similar, different to sentient beings?
Yes, basically talking about the same thing, but the Tibetan is different. The Tibetan is, the Tibetan is Drowa are those who wander. Yeah. Semchen is sentient beings. Yes. There are two different terms used in Tibetan to refer to basically what we call sentient beings. Yeah? But a more literal translation, Semchen is sentient beings. Semchen is those who possess mind. Chen is to have, to hold, or to have. Sem is mind. Those who possess mind are sentient beings. Drowa are wandering beings, migratory beings. The connotation there is beings that are aimlessly wandering around, pushed by our karmas. Yeah, not home.
Those include in the 6 realms? Like,
Yes, the 6 realms. Yes, yes.
got it.
As long as we're under the power of the kleshas, we are all wanderers. And for all you hippies, according to this definition, if you're wandering, you're lost by definition.
Dr. Lai?
Not all those who wander are lost. No, you are lost. Excuse me. According to this definition. Yes.
You said what determines the quality or determines the quality of our actions is our heart. And then but our heart is a very Occidental expression. So did you, if I understand well, or maybe not, is what determines the quality of our actions is our intention or our motivation?
Yeah, our intention, our motivation, our heart, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. So this Friday is first day of the new year according to the lunar calendar. So it begins also the 15-16 day morning practice. I think many of you cannot because you have work to go to. But even on the weekends, it will be live stream on Facebook. So either look for my page or Urban Dharma page, somewhere around there. If you registered for it, do your best to attend as many of it as you can. Again, something is always better than nothing. Yeah.
Well, will it be Zoom?
Yes, it will be Zoomed. That's why we register. So then look out for the email that will come with all the Zoom links and all of that. The text has already been sent out. So if you don't have it, let somebody know. Either info@udharmanc.com, which Fabiola will take care of you, or info@drikongdharmakirti.com, and Javier will take care of you. Two possible places for you to email to. This text is it's long, but it's meant for, okay, so briefly, it's meant for, if you read it, it tells you this was designed for doing 100,000 accumulations of the main 35 Buddha confession. The main 35 Buddha confession is quite short, actually. I think if you do the whole thing, it's like, I don't know, 10 minutes. I mean, possible to do it in under 10 minutes. And you want to slowly do it, you can stretch it very long. But, 10 minutes, one. So there's a tradition of doing like 100,000, like some of the Ngondro. So this text is designed for that. Yeah? So in there it says, like you avoid eating these things, avoid doing the following things, Then again, whatever your circumstances, you do the best to follow that. Yeah? Whatever your circumstances. This is not one of those things like, oh, I cannot do this, I cannot do this. No, then therefore I should not do it. Yeah? No, something is better than nothing. And so whatever your circumstances, within the limits, constraints of your circumstance, then you do the practice. Yeah. So those rules there are primarily meant for, when people do this 100,000 accumulation, they usually do it in retreat over a period of time, 6 months or whatever. So for 6 months, you keep those rules, and usually you're in isolation. Yeah, so that's the original context of this text. Yeah? But now, of course, we're not doing it in that way. Yeah. Oh, Nima, you are still awake. Is Wednesday night the night that you get to stay up because mom and dad is doing Dharma?
She stays up every night until 9.
Oh, really?
And then she sleeps in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the good life. Hi, Nima.
Say hi.
Hi. Long time no see. You remember me? Yes? Yes. Oh, good. Okay. If you want, can you all please turn to page 29, at the bottom of 29. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. By the blessings of the truth of the Kagyu Gurus, the excellent 3, Idams, Takinis, and Dharmapalas, may the spiritual and temporal places of this tradition of the second Nagarjuna flourish. Whatever harmful, discordant faults may arise, may they be pacified, and may there be abundant prosperity and happiness. May the teachings of the great Drigompa Ratnashri, the all-knowing Dharma Lord Master of interdependence, continue to increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. By the power of the virtues collected in accordance with the teachings of the pure realizations of the unmistaken teacher, may the teachings of Ratnashri of Drigung, the protector on the 10th Bhumi, flourish perpetually. Ratnashri is the Sanskrit name of Kyopa Jigten Sumgön, the founder of the lineage. So that's his Sanskrit name, Ratnashri. In Tibetan is Rinchen Pel. But his teacher, he used to call his teacher, whose name is Pamodrupa, he used to call his teacher Jigten Sumgön, which is a title or an honorific that is usually used for Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin, generously, the Lord of compassion. It means protector of the 3 worlds. So Ratnashri used to address his teacher, Jigten Sumgön, Lord of 3 worlds, Lord of protector of 3 worlds. 3 worlds refers to the central realm, the realm of form, the formless realm. That means all of samsara. So he used to call his teacher, oh, protector of 3 worlds, as a respectful term. Then it said that at some point his teacher, very publicly, in front of all the others, when Jiten Sumgun, well, when Ratnashri called him, "Oh, protector of three worlds," Pamadrupa says, you are the protector of three worlds. And so that's how then eventually he became known as Jiten Sumgun. So then historically, that has become his name. Actually, his given name, his dharma name, his ordination name is Ratnashri, or in Tibetan, Rinchen Pel. But his teacher called him protector of three worlds. Then, until now, his name became protector of three worlds. Yeah. Okay, that's it for tonight. Good. You'll be good.
Gracias, buenas noches.
Gracias.
Good night, good morning, goodbye.
Gracias, buenas noches.
And goodbye to the old year, and happy new year, and
Yep. See you next year.
yeah, happy Losar.
Notar.
Gracias.
Buenas noches. Bye.